Hi, second grade students. Today's story is from Knowledge 2, Lesson 8, called The Yellow and the Yangtze Rivers. Our first vocabulary word for this lesson is plateaus. Repeat after me, plateaus. Plateaus are high, wide, flat ground. Our next vocabulary word is silt. Say silt. Silt is a mixture of soil, sand, and clay. Our last vocabulary word is sorrow. Say sorrow. Sorrow is deep suffering or pain that comes from a loss. The Tigris, the Euphrates, the Nile, the Indus, the Ganges. When you hear these names, what images do you see in your mind? Where have you heard these names before? What do they have in common? Right, they are all rivers. And what is special about these 5 rivers? That's right. These ancient rivers supplied the water needed for the world's very first civilizations. Along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates in ancient Mesopotamia, people worked together to grow food, build cities, and develop a way of writing. Pyramids were built up and down the Nile River in Egypt, and in Asia, the Indus and the Ganges, snaking their way through India and Pakistan, have long been worshipped for their life-giving waters. Today you're going to learn about the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, 2 more rivers that belong to the special group. These 2 rivers, divided by the high snow-capped Yangtze Mountains, are the 2 longest rivers in China. They too are places where early civilizations began. More people live in the Yellow and the Yangtze River valleys today than any other region on the earth. High up in the mountains where the Yellow River begins, its waters are very clear, but as it travels its long route through the high plateaus of the Yangtze Mountains, the color changes. Look at the picture and see if you can guess what makes the color turn yellow. Rain and wind wash the silt, a fine mixture of soil, sand, and clay from the mountains into the river, making it a muddy yellow. As this happens, the river bottom rises. And if the river bottom rises, what do you think happens to the water in the river? It rises too. And then what happens? The river overflows its banks, flooding the land on either side of it. Does this sound familiar? What other rivers have we learned about that have flooded? Is this flooding good or bad? You have already learned the importance of flooding in creating fertile land for crops, but when large rivers like the Yellow River flood, they can also destroy whole cities. For this reason, the Chinese have given the Yellow River 2 nicknames, Mother River and China's greatest sorrow. The Yangtze River, China's longest river, lies to the south of the Yellow River. There the temperature is much warmer and flooding is less of a problem. Its fertile valley is sometimes called China's Rice Bowl because its temperate climate is perfect for growing rice. Wheat and millet, used in making bread and noodles, grow well along the Yellow River. But rice, the main crop of China, had its beginning along the Yangtze. Together, these 2 river valleys form the country's greatest food-producing region. The Chinese have always been inventors. Many of their inventions changed the way people farmed, making the river valleys more and more productive. For example, the ancient Chinese invented seed planting. Instead of scattering seeds on top of the earth, they developed seed drills used for planting seeds in ordered rows. They invented iron plows and harnesses so that horses or oxen could easily pull the plows. And to get water from low ground to the crops planted on higher ground, the Chinese invented a pump to irrigate the fields. Because they were inventive people, farming became easier for the Chinese people. More and more nomadic people, or people who have no set home, began to settle permanently along the banks of the 2 great rivers, where food was abundant. Then, the same thing happened in China that happened in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and India. Cities emerged. Many separate cities and areas sprang up along the banks of the rivers, each led by a powerful king. The kings ruled over the people, much like the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. The people built walls, houses, and temples. They made tools and weapons of wood, stone, bronze, and iron. They also built boats. And with the invention of copper coins, they began to trade with one another up and down both rivers. As they traded and farmed, the Chinese continued inventing new tools and systems. One of these was writing, which you will soon learn about, an important trademark of any civilization.